Welcome everyone, I am Adeshawa Josh and this is Africa Matters. We begin in Sudan, where security forces are accused of killing scores and injuring thousands of peaceful protesters during anti-military rallies. And the Nigerian government is deploying a new weapon in its war on counterfeit pharmaceuticals in order to save lives.
4,000 rounds of bullets, ready to break black bodies again.
Then we visit South Africa, where a singer pays tribute to the miners gunned down by police at Marikana in 2012. Protesters in Sudan have been holding regular rallies against the ruling junta since the military overthrew the civilian government of Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok last year. They want the military to withdraw from the transitional government coalition and go back to the barracks. But security forces have responded to the protests with lethal force. The doctors' union says its members have been treating patients with gunshot wounds in the chest, head and stomach. It also says at least 70 protesters have died and more than 2,200 have been injured since the October coup.
We took to the streets to express our opinion peacefully, but the military forces confronted us with live bullets and tear gas and sound grenades. Many of the protesters have been arrested and killed, and others wounded in critical condition. We call on all the Sudanese people and to all the free revolutionaries to barricade all the streets and to announce civil disobedience until the putschists fall.
The junta, led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, claims the military takeover was necessary to save Sudan from chaos. Authorities have repeatedly denied using live ammunition against demonstrators and say scores of security personnel have been wounded during the protests too. But the United Nations says attacks on medical facilities, anti-government rallies, and even journalists have skyrocketed since October as the junta tries to consolidate its power. The UN has also condemned the attacks and called on the military to respect the right to peaceful protest.
We repeat our call on the Sudanese authorities to immediately cease the unnecessary and disproportionate use of force, including the use of live ammunition, against peaceful protesters. The use of live ammunition is only permissible as a measure strictly of last resort in case of an imminent threat to life or serious injury.
This week, the pro-democracy movement kicked off a campaign of civil disobedience to protest the killing of 7 people on Monday who were shot dead by security forces. The United Nations mission in Sudan is now trying to broker talks to resolve the standoff between Sudan's military leaders, political parties, and pro-democracy protesters demanding a return to civilian rule. The Central Council for the Forces of Freedom and Change, CCFFC, a prominent Sudanese pro-democracy group, has conditionally accepted the offer. But the Sudanese Professionals Association, another key civil society group, and 2 political parties have rejected the UN proposal, saying they won't negotiate with the military. Let's hear more from Jihad Mashmoun, a researcher and political analyst on Sudan. He joins me from Exeter in the UK. Thank you so much for joining us. What will it take to resolve Sudan's political deadlock?
Firstly, thank you for having me, and that has always been the start. That has been the starting question that everyone has been asking in Sudan since al-Burhan and his allies' military coup in the 25th of October. Now, in essence, the streets are not controlled by the FFC or the SPA, and they've been calling for a civilian government, not a civilian-led government or a partnership with the military. As the international community or Friends of Sudan have been focusing on, or the UN mission has been encouraging or seeing that it's the only way forward. Sudanese, on the other hand, they're focusing on they're focusing on a civilian government made of competent individuals in Sudan, from Sudan, and they're focusing on this because they got tired of a partnership with the military, who have been undermining the civilian partnership from behind the scenes since 2019. Now, if I may focus on the certain points here that I mentioned on both sides between the FFC, civilians, and the military on how they're approaching the negotiations. The FFC on their own, they're divided into competing groups. One group that is with the side of the protest, and these are the people who used to be ministers in the last government who were arrested during the coup, along with their party leaders. Another group, these are members also of the FFC, but they were not part of the government. And they see the only way forward to end this torment is to agree with the de facto arrangement that Burhan has created.
Right.
Yeah, because, okay.
Right. So basically, I want you to just talk to me about the UN-led talks. Can those talks take off without the participation of Sudanese Professional Association who have been organizing the protests? Because you did mention that the CCFFC are actually also now not as united as they used to be. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes. Sadly, the FFC has not been united. And the SPA has no power over the streets to have much stake in the talk. To contribute much to the talk. What the SPA is actually doing is just viewing the perspective of the people of the streets or those who are leading the street protest. And those who are leading the street protests, they are the resistance committees. These are neighborhood committees that have been formed in the December revolution of 2018. They've been formed before that, and they've been leading the protests, and they've seen the FFC and the SPA discredited since the signing of the transition deal with the military in 2019.
So
that's why. Okay.
Go on. Make your point.
That's why when the UN mission is proposing these dialogues, there's not really much that can be added to the table. Because both the FFC on its own is already divided. The SPA is not controlling the streets, and it's being controlled by the resistance committees. The military, on the other hand, are also, if I may add this one, they don't really see much credibility or stake of taking the negotiation seriously.
So the military says a lack of coordination between the political parties and the civil societies is the reason why they staged the coup in the first place. So can unity among these groups force the military to hand over power to a civilian government? Because that seemed to be the point you're also making, is it?
That is, at retrospect, yes. But if we also, zoom in to certain details to begin with, it's that the military, yes, understands that the FFC were not united to begin with, and they were actually encouraging the divisions within the FFC since the signing of the transition deal. They've been sowing that divisions and used the Juba Peace Agreement to further those divisions that brought in a faction within the FFC into the second government of Hamdok. That's the military. I would like to also mention that the military doesn't really put much stake into these talks because Burhan and his allies, they formed a Supreme Council of the Armed Forces 5 days ago or so. And also they've been focusing on, or if I can be precise, the elections. Literally, it seems that the scenario that the military was hoping for is to drag these talks into the elections.
Well, there's been a lot of debate about what happened and what didn't happen then. We just hope that Sudan gets some kind of clarity as to where they want to be leading the country. I'm talking about the current government, and I hope that the UN talks bring some kind of peace to the country. Jihad Mashmahon, a researcher and political analyst on Sudan, thank you so much for speaking to us on Africa Matters. Africa's biggest football championship, the Africa Cup of Nations, continues in Cameroon. And it's been a week full of surprises as 24 teams jostle for the top spot. On Tuesday, Rwandan Salima Mukasanga became the first woman to referee an Africa Cup of Nations match when she officiated the clash between Guinea and Zimbabwe. Since 1957, 32 editions of the African tournament have been refereed exclusively by men. Meanwhile, four-time African champions Ghana were humiliated from the Africa Cup of Nations after crashing 3-2 to debutant Comoros in a group match. And Cameroonians have been showing their true colors as they cheer on their national team, the indomitable Lions, who advance to the next stage of the championship. And the football fever has caught many fans across Africa, and no less in the West African country of Ivory Coast. Football fans watching the African Cup of Nations are being welcomed with masks, COVID-19 tests, and the opportunity to get vaccinated. It's an initiative by the Ministry of Health in the fight against the pandemic. Dominic Brian Omondi tells us more.
Celebrations in Ivory Coast as their national team, known as the Elephants, score a goal in the Africa Cup of Nations. It's one of the biggest sporting events on the continent, bringing together football fans who've come to watch their favorite matches at AFCON villages like this one in Abidjan. For Ivorian authorities, it's an opportunity to boost coronavirus vaccinations.
The Omicron variant is in full bloom, so we came with vaccines and we are trying to sensitize everyone here to wear masks and to respect COVID-19 protocols. At the entrance, we've put in place several measures to keep football supporters safe.
The tournament was originally scheduled to take place last year, but was postponed due to the pandemic. Its resumption has been met with lots of excitement, but stadiums remain relatively empty. Most fans have chosen to stay away due to the strict COVID-19 protocols that have been put in place. Masks have been made mandatory to access AFCON villages. Once inside, rapid tests and vaccinations are being offered at mobile clinics.
If it was up to me alone, everyone will get vaccinated because there are a lot of people here. So if you don't get vaccinated, you can catch the disease from someone else who is sick, whereas if you are vaccinated, you are protected.
Health authorities say Abidjan is the center of the outbreak in the Ivory Coast, which is why health authorities are targeting it as a place to accelerate their vaccination campaign.
We've administered more than 7 million doses so far. We hope to double the figure by June. All the teams have been immunized and health workers are doing everything necessary.
Ivorian authorities are urging fans to keep coming back so they can cheer their team to victory and get vaccinated while they are there. Dominic Brian Omondi, Africa Matters.
And for some players like former England international Steven Corker, taking part in the Africa Cup of Nations is personal. He's representing his grandfather's country, Sierra Leone, and he's hoping for an international comeback after battling alcohol and gambling problems. Corker's only cap for England was against Sweden in a 2012 friendly, when he scored a goal in a 4-2 defeat. He's currently playing club football with Turkish Super League side Gaziantep, and he tells us what he's been up to.
It's been 10 years since I first played for England, made my debut in a very famous game against Sweden, where we nicknamed it the Zlatan Show. He was incredible that day. I was fortunate enough to play, get my goal, and it felt like that would be the start of a long and promising England career. However, my career took a different turn. I had many issues in my personal life which I needed to address. Thankfully, today I sit here 3 years sober. I feel a different man. And Sierra Leone kindly offered me the opportunity to come and play in this tournament and represent Sierra Leone, where my granddad was from. So it's been a long journey. It's full of ups and downs, but it's one that actually for me fits very well with the country, because my story is one of persistence. You know, I never gave up when times were difficult, and I believe Sierra Leone is very much the same. So I think it's a good fit. We've had so much doom and gloom for so many years with the civil war, Ebola, Corona now, we've had mudslides. It's been a tough time. So the other day was a day for our country to smile, to have some joy. For me, it's the most important important part for me. What legacy can I leave? Building schools in Sierra Leone, helping charity projects around the world, for me is actually one of the most selfish things I can do, because I feel great when doing it. It's great to see the reaction of the children when I'm presenting them with football. They didn't like the pens and pencils too much, but the footballs, anything sport related back home was received so well, so many smiles. For me, it's so important to use my position to help those who are struggling, not just in terms of charity, but also those who are suffering with depression and alcoholism and other forms of addiction, because that's a big part of my stories. I'm only on loan for the season at Gaziantep. I wanted to play games. Unfortunately, with Vitor Pereira, I wasn't given a chance, so the options were limited what I could do once I signed for Fenerbahce. I chose the option to go on loan to Gaziantep and work with my old coach Errol Bullitt, and it's been somewhat a success. It was difficult to get going. I was obviously low on confidence heading there after a troubling time at Fenerbahce, but I feel as the season's gone on, I've started to perform better. The team is performing better, and I hope that we could finish with a successful campaign over the next 4 or 5 months. It's a good club, and we've got a lot of good players there.
You're watching Africa Matters, and here's a roundup of other stories making news across the continent. More than 10 people have died in flash floods triggered by torrential rain in Madagascar's capital, Antananarivo. The floods caused landslides and houses to collapse. About 20 districts around the capital are on red alert for flooding, with built-up urban areas with poor drainage systems seen as especially vulnerable. More rain is expected in the coming days as rescue teams evacuate areas at risk and prepare gymnasiums and other temporary shelters for those left homeless. On Tuesday, Chad's transitional authorities released 22 detainees convicted of taking up arms against the central government in the past 10 years. Nearly 300 prisoners have been granted amnesty ahead of the national reconciliation talks scheduled for February. Chad's Transitional Military Council, led by Mohamed Idris Deby, says the dialogue must take place before presidential and legislative elections can be held. Gambian President Adama Barrow has been sworn in for a second 5-year term. Barrow was first elected in 2016, ending more than 20 years of dictatorship under Yahya Jammeh. The former property developer was re-elected in December, winning 53% of the vote. A Malawian musician is making waves on several social media platforms, including TikTok. 92-year-old Gidis Chalamanda doesn't even own a smartphone and has no idea what TikTok is. And yet the music legend is now a social media star, with a song Lini Hu amassing over 80 million views on the video sharing platform and spawning mashups and remixes across the world. The nonagenarian singer and guitarist has been a constant presence on the Malawian music scene for 7 decades. We go to Nigeria next, where 3 years after launching a war on fake pharmaceuticals in 2001, the amount available on the market dropped from 67% to 16%. And the government is now hoping a new tool to combat an influx of copycat drugs will drive down the numbers further and save more lives. Sena Ceylan has the story.
Nigeria's National Agency for Food and Drug Administration has joined forces with several startup companies to create stickers with unique codes that manufacturers and distributors can attach to boxes and sachets of pills. They hope to limit the prevalence of fake drugs in Nigeria, which is 10% higher than the global average. NAFDAC says painkillers, antimalarials, and antibiotics are the most counterfeited. But now, people can use apps on their phones developed by startups like Biofem Industries, Checkit Technologies, and Sproxil to scan the code and confirm a product's authenticity.
After the experience we had, and we were able to mitigate that experience using the technology, we decided that all our products was going to have it, so that we do not wait till when it is counterfeited before we protect the patient.
Nigeria has a population of more than 200 million people, so it's a huge market for pharmaceutical companies. But fake and substandard drugs have been flooding the market for decades. And research shows that fake malaria medication alone is responsible for 12,300 deaths each year.
The major problem of counterfeits in Nigeria and Africa is as a result of broken supply chain processes. Right? You have several importers having the same license to import the same product. You know, it's very difficult, and then you probably now have different barcode numbers for the same products. You know, but probably the product is in different packaging, right? So it just creates a conflict already in the market. So the system already is broken.
NAFTAC's Director of Investigation and Enforcement, Kingsley Ejiofor, says in the past 3 years, the agency seized $4.8 billion worth of counterfeit drugs.
That has boosted the confidence of people in this. So modern technologies have really helped. So, but for that, people would go and, imagine some of the drugs in time past that people will ingest without, that technology. So the technology has really helped.
Chinedum Shijioke says his company has been expanding into other countries by making their app more accessible and user-friendly.
The idea was, why don't you put the power in the hand of the product end user to be able to validate what he or she is buying at the point of purchase. So with that, first they note the shop where they bought it, and they can tell their family members, and no shop owner wants to be tagged as someone who sells counterfeit product.
Such innovations seem to be making a real difference in the fight against fake drugs. However, experts warn that if the war is to be won, more must be done to stop the lucrative trade and save lives. Sena Sailan, Africa Matters.
And our final stop is in South Africa, where the acclaimed singer Msaki has released a new album that revisits the 2012 massacre of dozens of striking mine workers by police in Marikana. She says the killings inspired her to write an album about social injustice. Ramesa Choda has more.
Afropop singer Msaki sings in her native tongue, Xhosa, about the sadness and disappointment felt by many when 44 people, including 34 miners, were shot dead by police at the Lonmin Platinum mine almost 10 years ago. Her new album, Platinum Heart Beating, is a play on words about the massacre.
Platinum Heart is a reference to the mineral, platinum, and I changed the ending of the word to add a B, which is a question about the state, the emotional state of being, of numbness. And so I merged those two words. And I think because the first song I wrote was Blood, Guns and Revolutions, which is about Marikana and the Platinum Belt, it seemed fitting to just mark that was the moment that got me creating in this way and moving towards making what is somewhat a protest and an album of protest and love songs.
She says the album is also about the emotional state of numbness that many felt after witnessing the worst police brutality since apartheid ended.
4,000 rounds of bullets, ready to break black bodies again.
Fans say her music keeps them grounded.
I've been to all Msaki's concerts because her music heals me. Every time I listen to it, she's got this angelic voice. It's like, when you want to tap, when a lot of us are tired of the city, we go home. Now, when you want to tap into the reality of who you are and how life is and what your genuine self is, you listen to Msaki's music and then it brings that peace to me.
Other songs on the album tackle corruption, gender-based violence, anti-consumerism, and black pride. Msaki says she wants her songs not just to entertain, but to make people think too. Ramesa Choda, Africa Matters.
And this week we explore Mangochi, a town in Malawi. At the turn of the 20th century, it served as a colonial outpost to limit slave trafficking in Africa. And now it attracts thousands of tourists with its scenic bay and lakeshore. That's our show this week. Please share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode or ideas you would like us to cover on Twitter using the hashtag #AfricaMatters. Please feel free to reach out to me on my personal handle @AdeshowaJosh. We'll leave you with these images from across the continent.